guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to be using the double placket method for the front, and then I want to draft the front pattern. You know, the two front patterns. The front patterns is into two because of the double placket, and it has a single back pattern. But then I'll be drafting it on a paper today. And one thing about this method is I'm going to be using one pattern for the three patterns, so it's more like a 3-in-1 pattern. So right here on my paper, as you can see, I've measured 1/2 inch for my shoulder. So this is my shoulder line, and the 1/2 inch is my shoulder allowance, and this point here is my bust point, this is my waist point, and this is my hip point. The full length of my t-shirt is 25 inches plus my 1 inch allowance for the folding. So I'm just going to tag that now, so that shoulder line, bust line, waistline, and hip line. So right here I already took 4 inches, and why I took 4 inches out for my placket is because for my front t-shirt I'm going to be using the double placket method. So I'm going to be showing you how to sew your t-shirt with the double placket method. So here I have 4 inch. That 4 inch, you're only going to be using it for only one side of your t-shirt, so don't worry, I'll explain more of that as we go on in the video. So I have 4 inches here. So this is my midpoint, which is my center front and my center back. As I said earlier, we are going to be drafting the front and the back in one pattern paper. So let's start drafting. So moving on, for our neckline, I'm going to be using 3 inches at the width. I'm going to be using 3 inches as the width for the neckline. I know, as I said earlier, we are drafting the front and the back on one pattern paper. So the back neckline is going to go down by 1 inch, and the front neckline is going to go down by 3 inches. So the difference between the back and the front pattern is the neckline and the armhole, and also the placket. You know, the back pattern, you're not going to be slashing it, so that's another difference. So I'm just going to cover out that 1 inch now. I'm going to cover that 1 inch for our back neckline, and then the 3 inches for our front neckline. Moving on, I'm going to measure our shoulder line. So you are going to measure your shoulder line. We're going to put the half measurement of your shoulder line along this line. So my shoulder line is 16 inches. So 16 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches here. So on that 8 inches line, I'm going to go down by 1 inch, and then trace that 1 inch to where we marked our neckline measurement. So now we want to get our armhole measurement. Note that I didn't mark our chest line. Your chest line is usually 2 inches above your bust line. Or if you want to get your armhole measurements, for example, my bust line is 37 inches. So you go as 37 inches divided by 6 plus 1.5. That's how you get your armhole measurement. It works for any armhole. So your armhole is 30 in, your bust line is, your bust span is 30 inches. You divide it by 6 plus 1.5. So my bust span is 37 inches. I divide it by 6 plus 1.5, and we have 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches. But for my lines to be straight, I usually like to do this. Since our shoulder line is 8, I'm going to come down here and measure the 8 inches, and then mark my 8 inches for my armhole. So I'm just going to rule that. So now, as I mentioned earlier, we are drafting front and back in one pattern. Your armhole for your front is usually different from your armhole for your back. So I'm going to show you now how to draft that in one piece and how to be able to cut it when you are using one pattern. I'm going to show you because I'm going to sew the t-shirt along with you so that you will see what I'm doing. So remember that my armhole measurement is 8 inches. I'm going to divide that 8 inches by 2, which is 4, on this armhole line to get our front armhole. That's what we're trying to get right now. So I'm marking that 4 inches, and you're going to go sideways on that 4 inches. You're going to mark 0.5 inches, which is half an inch, obviously. So I don't know if you can see because I'm using pencil. I'm coming. I'll use my marker so you can see me better. So remember, 4 inches here, and sideways 0.5 inches. So on this 0.5 inch, you are going to use your ruler and rule a straight line to that 4 inches, the first half of the 4 inches. So I'm just going to rule that line now, and then now you are going to go in with your curved ruler and then curve it. So that's the front armhole. Now for the back armhole, you are just going to go ahead with your curved ruler and then just curve from that 4 inch you've measured outside. Your front armhole is going in because you need arm movement. You know, you move your hands very well, so you can move your hands very well, because if you don't remove that half inch on the front pattern, it's going to be, your hand movement is going to be restricted. So for the back pattern, for the back armhole I mean, so we are going to, from that 4 inch mark that we've given, we'll draw this line. So this is your back armhole. So I'm just going to use a ruler to make that clear. So yes, so we have our front armhole and our back armhole in one pattern. So I'm just going to rule the neckline because I forgot to use the marker to rule it out so you can see it better. So yes, now moving on, what we need to do now is add our body measurements on the side. So you go ahead and add your bust measurements, your waist measurements, and your hip measurements. Make sure to add your allowance with it. So I'm going to be using a 1 inch allowance. You could use 1.5 inch allowance. Even if I'm using a 1 inch allowance, I'm giving an ease of 0.5, so it means that my sewing allowance is ½ inch. So you can do whatever pleases you on that. So I'm going to come back to you guys after I've put in my body measurements. So guys, I'm done adding my side measurements. So I added my measurements including my sewing allowance. I used 1 inch allowance as I said earlier. So yes, I went ahead to measure 2 inches from the center line for the other part of for the buttonhole. For the buttonhole. So the double placket is where you're having the 4 inches, and then for the other side of your t-shirt is where you're going to be using the 2 inches. When we're cutting our pattern, I'll show you. So I just decided to say that so that nobody seems confused. So guys, for the back pattern, because we are going to be cutting the back pattern first before we cut the front pattern, we are going to be adding 1 inch to our shoulder in the back pattern, and we are going to be cutting off 1 inch from our front pattern. Just take note of that. When we are cutting on the paper, on our fabric, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So with this, we are done cutting the 3 patterns in one. It is this easy, very easy. So let's cut out the pattern. So this is what the back pattern is looking like. So we are just going to unpin that. Remember, our pattern is supposed to be on a fold, so you're not cutting it. So this is what the back is looking like. This is what we have for the back pattern. So I'm just going to put that aside, and then we are going to move on to modifying the front pattern. So now remember that we are taking 1 inch on the shoulder for the front. So I'm just going to mark that 1 inch. So this is the 1 inch that we are taking out from the front. So I'm going to cut out the armhole for the front, cut out the neckline for the front, and also cut out the shoulder. So this is what the front is looking like. Remember, the front is into 2 parts. So we have the one that has the 2-inch placket, and we have the one that has the button hole, or the button where you insert your button, which is, no, the placket 4-inch, and where you insert your button 2-inch. So we are going to start with the 2 inches of where you would insert your button. So I'm just going to fold on this line. I'm just going to fold. So guys, I already folded my placket for fixing the button. So when you are cutting this out on your fabric, you make sure that the right side of your fabric is facing up, and then when you are cutting for the double placket, you make sure that the left side is facing up. That is how you know. If this is going to confuse you, please draft in 3 different patterns. But if you understand what I'm saying, for the buttonhole, which is the 2 inches, the front, you should cut with your fabric facing up. For the double plackets, you should cut with your fabric facing down. So let's cut on the fabric. So guys, this is what the right side of the front, sorry, left side of the front is looking like. So I'm just going to show you that. So remember, I cut it facing up. I'm just going to take out the pins. Yeah, so this is what we have for the front. So this is the 2 inches. You just fold it this way, and we have the, yes, so this is what it's going to be looking like for the front. So guys, I just measured 2 inches at the edge of the shirt, and I'm curving it down to the center of the shirt to give it that curved look, right? So guys, this is the end of this video, so watch out for part 2. I'll be showing you how to draft collar, how to sew it, and also how to sew the double placket so you won't get confused. So watch the next video so that you get the complete tutorial on how to draft this and draft and sew the double placket t-shirt. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.